Do you share his ideology? Are you now comfortable calling yourself a democratic socialist?
Look, I am a progressive and I'm a Democrat, and I'm someone who believes we need to make a lot of change in this country. I'm not scared of anyone who likes that label. It's not what I happen to use, but I respect folks who use that label. And I think when you look at the policies...
You think the labels are interchangeable? Do you think that you're talking like they're interchangeable? Do you think that they are?
I think they are less and less problematic, if you will. I think it means less and less to people in the negative sense. Honestly, I've talked to people all over this country, Chuck, and, this is not the Cold War anymore. When people talk about democratic socialism, which I think also could be called social democracy, something I do align with, what it means is that we have a society that's fair to people and provides both civil rights and economic rights. I think a lot of Americans believe in that, especially since the Great Recession. I think a lot of the newer generations come up are very comfortable with those notions. And one thing that's crucial is, Bernie's stance over the years really was ahead of the curve in understanding a lot of the dangers facing this country and working people. And I think there are a lot of Americans who are not hung up on the label. They actually are much more interested in what do you stand for and have you been on the right side of these big issues. And Bernie can say, hey, for decades and decades, he's been talking about working people and the need for a society that actually focuses on working people first. And I don't think there's a lot of people who doubt him on that.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.